SHSO Online Community. It's been a while, and I'm sorry. But not to worry, as you can tell by the title and maybe the thumbnail, I bring you all with another video that's going to hit even harder than my usual videos. And that is because I don't only have myself, but the head developer here with me as well. Now, identifying him can be a little confusing at times. Some of you may know him as Sapinair, Ruprecht the Monkey Boy, Wolfma, or CrabFu, which is what I call him. CrabFu, it's great to have you. Would you like to say hello to the wonderful members of the community? Maybe introduce yourself to some of those who may not have bumped into you yet?
Hello, this is CrabFu. I'm one of the developers working to bring back Superhero Squad Online, and I'm here to answer your questions. So let's get started.
I'm going to start off strong on question number 1. What's your favorite thing about this particular remake project?
First of all, I would say that remake is not exactly the best term. I'd say a revival would probably be better, and mostly because we're using the client code, a decompiled version of it, so it's pretty almost identical to what Gaz was using when they were developing. So that's, while that had to be modified slightly to make some things work, it's not really being rewritten or remade. So between that and the fact that we're using all their assets, the only part that is really, you could say, is being rewritten is the server part. But overall, probably better to refer to the project as a revival. Not a big deal, but I just thought I'd throw that out there. As far as my favorite part about this remake, well, I guess of all the games that have been shut down over the years, SHSO is probably my favorite, so that's why I chose to work on it. Number 2 would probably be Marvel Heroes, and I hope I can make some progress on that someday as well, but I think we're going to have a little bit more problems with the assets on that game. But we'll see.
What's an aspect that you miss the most about the original game that you look forward to reviving here?
My favorite aspect of the game was always the multiplayer missions, and also playing them solo sometimes was fun. Just grinding the different missions, leveling up the characters, making them more powerful, and just having a variety of characters to choose from, with a bunch of different power sets and move sets. That was always my favorite part of the game.
So, we understand that this remake is one that focuses primarily on restoring the original just as it was. Let's say after that part's down, you get to add one creative new feature. What's that? What's one that has been a dream of yours to include?
Well, other than adding many new characters and missions, or I mean, at least that's what I would wish for, there's also several other features that I've been thinking about that would be nice to add at some point. One of them would be like a costume closet feature where you can switch the costume or skin of a character. So rather than changing the whole character, you by in the character selection screen, you just change the skin. So like Spider-Man might have several different costumes that would apply to a certain model, and you could switch between those at will. Another feature I've been thinking about is having the ability to sell back inventory items that perhaps you don't need or want. Perhaps even having an auction house style thing where users can trade or sell items with each other. Finally, another thing I've been thinking of is trying to come up with something, for now I'm calling it story arc mode, which would be something similar to challenges and achievements, except that you're trying to frame a series of tasks around a storyline. And so you complete however many tasks there are, and then you'd have some kind of reward at the end, maybe fractals or a character that's not offered in the shop at the moment or something like that. But whereas the challenges and the achievements didn't really frame those things in a story, we can kind of try to come up with plot lines and insert the tasks at various points in the story and try to make things more immersive that way and less boring to grind levels, hopefully.
What's been the most tedious thing about this remake in terms of development? Something that's just hard to put up with, but has to be done to perfection in order to keep moving, or at least the closest thing to something as such.
Well, probably the asset team had the most tedious task. They had something like 1,500 and more asset bundles that they had to identify and sort and convert. And those asset bundles were not named anything useful. So, they'd have to go through various tricks to try to identify what asset bundle is this, rename it, convert it, and there's so many of them. So yeah, that was a arduous task. Luckily, I didn't have to do a lot of that myself. I had the team of Fire and Ice and Doggo and Booker, and they were doing most of that work. Now, as far as the stuff I did myself that was the most tedious, that would probably be the first couple of weeks of working on this project, because I really didn't have a good idea of what to do, whether it was going to work. And even when I made a little bit of progress in as far as decompiling the code, getting anything running was very tedious because I didn't have the required assets in place. So I'd start running the code, get an error saying such and such is missing, go find that, make it work, get on to the next bug, and so forth, repeat. And this went on for a couple of weeks. I think at the end of the first week, I finally managed to make enough progress that the very first splash screen with the blue gazillion came up, and that was like, ooh. And then another week went by before I think I got to the next splash screen where the progress bar comes across and you see Nick Fury. So once I kind of got past that one, I was starting to feel a little bit more confident that we were going to be able to do this. And especially maybe 3 or 4 weeks into the project when we finally got the first zone loading and being able to walk a character around. That was another big milestone. But it was all very tedious work trying to get that stuff going.
Do you imagine there ever being things that the original Superhero Squad removed, such as headquarters? Reason why I ask is because it's restoring the original game while also bringing back some of the old aspects that were cut short. Is that something you'd have in mind?
We certainly plan on bringing back some of the things that Gaz had removed from the game, such as HQ and the prize wheel and some things like that. The only problem would be if we don't have all the code or assets for it. Mostly I'm worried about the assets. We'll just have to see. For instance, it was quite a surprise when I went to try to restore the arcade mode part and found out that we did not have the assets for that. Apparently that was always stored in another place from the rest of the game assets, so that's why nobody had saved that particular cache. So we'll just have to see as we go along when we intend to restore something, and if we can't find the assets, then we'll just have to wait until hopefully maybe we can find them or get them from somebody at some point. Time will tell.
This question is sort of a counterpart to number one. What's been your least favorite thing of this whole process, or your biggest letdown?
The biggest letdown working on this project is when we can't find assets for various things, such as the holiday zones for Halloween and Christmas. We don't have those. We don't have the arcade assets, as I mentioned in the previous question. I still have hope that maybe someday we can recover these assets from somewhere. But for now, they are still missing, and we just have to continue working on other things.
As for the final act of having all characters, missions, and unlockables down, would there be a process for obtaining them? Do you intend on re-implementing the game currency such as gold and fractals to buy them? Or will they all be free and available by default?
We pretty much have all of the assets for all the characters and missions. Do not have two of the characters ready yet because there are some tweakings that need to be done to make them work. But we do have those assets. We have found them. Same with the missions. We know we have them. I just don't think they have all been converted from one bundle format to the other. That's something that Fire does occasionally when he does his mission polls. And as far as the currencies, yes, we are going to go with fractals and gold. You earn fractals in missions or by doing things in zones like chasing robbers and getting the trouble bots, stuff like that. As for gold, we're not sure how we're going to do that. I mean, we'll probably bring back the prize wheel at some point and put gold on some parts of that wheel. We might also have some achievements or challenges that reward gold, but that's all kind of still up in the air and a ways off.
So, we're both aware that not only are you and the team actively putting things together accordingly, but that there are also the community members who share their own ideas, make suggestions, and basically provide their own input. Has anything of their inception been considered and meant to take effect in an upcoming build? Or has something like that happened already? And if so, what was it? Or what would that be?
I know that there are channels on the Discord for the community to put bug reports or feature requests in, but I don't really look at that too much at this point. That would be something I'd be more interested in looking at after the core of the game has been finished. Because as far as bug reports go, people put in bug reports for things that we know are not ready yet, so it's kind of a waste of time to go through that stuff at this point. Same with feature requests. I mean, there's so many features that people would like to see, but we're nowhere near getting ready to implement new stuff. So all that stuff will be looked at some point, but not till the end.
I imagine you guys having a primary checklist for this remake. What's currently the top prioritized thing on that checklist, like the next breakthrough the members of the community should be expecting in the next build of the game?
Yes, we've been keeping a roadmap list for some time now. And recently, we had actually allowed the paid tier members to choose the priority of what gets done first and second and third. So I believe the next thing on the list that they chose to be done would be to make the mystery boxes work.
Now, with this being a remake or a rewrite, I imagine that restoration can only go so far, which would be very far, which would still be very far, but perhaps not as 100% compared to what Disney and Marvel could do if they were to bring the game back themselves. So my final question is, what's the peak level of restoration Super Hero Online Rewritten can give us? What would that include and what would it look like?
Peak restoration of the game, what would that look like? Well, as I've mentioned before, some of that is hinges on whether we can find required assets for certain things like arcade and holiday zones and whatnot. So if we can't find those assets, those will definitely be missing. Other than that, most of the features of the game should still be recoverable. But there are some small things that will be kind of difficult to get exactly right. One thing that comes to mind is like rewards for the missions. Apparently, that kind of thing was stored in the database. So that was not in the client at all. So at the moment, the best I can do is kind of look for videos of missions and kind of get an idea of what the rewards were and try to mimic that the best I can. But to get 100% of the how it was, I would need to be able to see those data tables for the loot tables, I think they called them. And we just don't have access to that. So, hope that answers the question.
CrabFu, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I really appreciate you taking the time to answer some of these questions. I'm glad that we didn't settle for one of those text-on-text interviews either, because that would have been rather repetitive of some of the old Super SHSO Online Remake videos I've seen. And I'm sure some of my viewers will tell you that I try to include things that are fresh. So additionally, thanks for making that exception and hopping on voice with me. I'm sure the viewers will really appreciate that as well. It's been great having you.
You're welcome. We have a great Superhero Squad online community, and I am always happy to answer questions about the game development. So I hope I was able to answer all the questions sufficiently.
Before I conclude the video, I also want to say that CrabFu is one of the most tolerable, neutral guys in the whole community. He acknowledges right and wrong, stays within reason, never steers off from objective in a debate about the remake, and he always strives to aim in the best direction going forward for this mission and everyone on board. And to me, most importantly, he doesn't give anyone a hard time. Out of all the people I've gotten to know throughout this journey, being in this community, he's the one who's kept my utmost respect. With a guy like him leading the whole project, this remake will remain, without a doubt, superior to the others. That's why among all of the content creators who do videos on the remakes, I was never one to switch focus to other projects that didn't involve his management in one way or another. If I have to retract a statement later, I will, but as I'm writing this on October 16, 2021, I can safely say that CrabFu is one of the ways to go for those who want to reach the end goal, which is a fully restored Super SHSO Online remake. If you all experience a bigger gap between updates, it's because some time ago I've chosen to seclude myself from the mainland, you could say. I had come to the conclusion that the community was quite, well, many things more than one. And I'm not going to dive too deep into it because I don't want to make anyone feel like they don't stand a chance or that it's not worth their trip. But basically, the best one-word description would be that I found the community, aka those who make up Discord servers where we wait updates, oppressive. I felt restraint from being myself, doing my job as a Daily Bugle news reporter, a moderator, and as well as the overhead communications manager. Here's a little backstory. Remember when I said that one of CrabFu's known names were Wolfma? He got that name because people made fun of me for using words like dogma, as communication manager, dogma has permitted me to do this. I'm not going to name names because that's getting too deep into it, and I don't want people getting chewed out for it anytime soon. This was a decision that I made months ago. But in this example, they told me that I was pretending to be a smart individual, indicating that I'm rather a dumb one, among other things. They responded to this by taking the dog element out of the word and turned it into an animal gimmick. Everyone got an animal nickname. Dogma, Catma, Fishma, Wolfma, etc. It was an animal vocabulary party. The gang at question armied up with their animal word nicknames and freshly new profile pictures of a skin-revealing Jessica Alba that I had previously reprimanded them for posting in the chat, and spent the time of their day mocking and insulting me for my previous acts of using big words they either didn't like or couldn't understand, and having to deliver consequences to them as one of the only moderators at the time, along with a bunch of other trivial stuff that I had no real way of preventing without neglecting to do my job there or accommodating to a handful of people who just simply weren't fond of my company. And again, I'm not going to put them in a certain light by adding names, channels, and faces to go with this context. If they had problems so large that they went such great lengths to cause me discomfort over a Discord server, more is the pity. So if you're a part of these communities and you know exactly who I'm talking about and remember the scenarios that I just mentioned, understand that these people are allowed to think and feel however they want. But when you're surrounded by that much negativity, after a while it becomes a matter of how much longer are you willing to put up with it. The root of my decision to isolate myself was that my only real goal ever since I joined the community as a Daily Bugle News reporter for Ultimate Squad was to connect with the head developers and provide you guys with updates. Specifically updates that come sooner rather than later, or with fresh news rather than parroted news. However, in a community where you're not welcomed or appreciated, having to deal with those kinds of people in the process is just simply not worth it. And I've had talks with CrabFu about this, and he agreed. Like I said, these individuals are allowed to think and feel however they want. My stance remains that I was only ever doing my job and trying my best to be either passive or neutral with everyone. And if I wasn't doing my job accordingly, CrabFu would have fired me ages ago. My problem is that I feel like they were allowed to do certain things and treat others a certain kind of way, without facing consequences. As someone who would collaborate with the other moderators, when there were others, I was not given the liberty to act on these things whenever it was just me, by the people that were higher than me, such as CrabFu or Strat, if anyone remembers who he is. There was clearly a lot of cyberbullying involved, and it made the whole environment feel very full of toxicity, pretty much. And those were the only scenarios in which I wasn't allowed to do anything about it as a moderator or communications manager, other than to accept it and let it pass. And I disagree with the side of management that facilitated that. I'm not saying all of this in addition to the interview with CrabFu as a call out or a means to invalidate the community as it stands today. If anything, I've heard that after a while it started doing better, give or take a few incidents. My reasoning for addressing this is that the way in which it's been facilitated in my experience is a problem, and I'm updating you all on my place with the community as I provide the solution. So look, I don't want people going on a Discord server within the community and having to be surrounded by that kind of environment. It was filled with hate and animosity towards each other, and I believe it all started with a division of 2 primary remakes years back. I only stood out inside of most of it. One extension of being able to join a Discord server and receive updates is being able to share an experience with a bunch of like-minded people who want to see the game come back. It helps you be able to look back, share memories, and come up with great new ideas together, which is an extension as necessary, because it keeps the hope alive. That's part of what's going to get us where we want to be with this. But an example of an extension that is unnecessary is starting conflict, peace breaking, and inciting against one another. Now I ask myself, isn't this inevitable? And my answer is, in some ways, yes, it's definitely not always 100% able to be evaded. However, in the cases of bullying and just the general negativity I had to face, it certainly was avoidable. In the examples I've mentioned in this video, said individuals could just try to understand that, mods voted against uploading photos of a half-naked woman, or that everyone has a different length of vocabulary. and that there's never a need to give someone a hard time based on the words that they would use, or whether or not you ever learned those words and may not know what they mean just yet. Like I said, these matters were trivial and empty-headed, but they were allowed to happen, and that's probably part of the reason why things got as bad as they did. My focus is that they all could have been avoided on the end of the people causing it, and the higher-ups, who wouldn't put a stop to it, or at least delegate me to do so, weren't helping. They blindly made it a normal aspect of that specific community. So as for my solution, I introduced to you all Superhero Squad Online Community, a new Discord server with the head developer present that has actually been experimental since just before the new year. It's themed as a Discord iteration of the original game, and there's been mentioning of how peaceful and entertaining it's been, with zero insight. With this community, I won't be condoning any of the things that I've mentioned above that were accepted and allowed in the others. Everyone will be free to become one as fans of Super Squad Online, while also not having to worry about any unnecessary conflict or people who just don't contribute to a more positive aspect of the community. That's going to be one of the things that we intend on managing better. For those who are interested, feel free to join us with the invite link in the description. As for those who have already joined as of late, thank you for being with us. I don't know how long this video is coming out to be as I'm writing it, but for those who don't like long videos, it's not looking good. But I think that pretty much wraps it all up. Thanks again to CrabFu for being featured in this video, and thank you all for watching. And thanks to those who made it to the end. Links are in the description, and all questions and comments are welcome. Take care.